For the past 5 years, I've had the pleasure of speaking to residents in retirement homes and to members of service clubs. Today, I will give you the brief history of early health care, the building of our hospital, and the beginnings of our hospital auxiliary. I feel that I'm able to do this because it will soon be 87 years since I was born in Cloverdale, actually the Royal Columbian Hospital, but I lived all of my growing up years in Cloverdale. At that time, the population of Cloverdale was 600 people, but it was the most important place in the municipality of Surrey. The municipal hall was there, and on the second floor was the school board office. There were about 3 or 4 employees in each area. The only high school, Surrey High School, was based in Cloverdale. The only bank, the Bank of Montreal, and there was a very cute little cottage, and that was the BC telephone office. And when you went there to pay your bill, you saw 2 or 3 telephone operators lined up and, of course, plugging in and saying, "Number, please." The Surrey Police was based in Cloverdale. There was a chief of police and 3 constables. As I walked to school in the morning, there was an old white wooden house, and on the front of that it said RCMP, and the Union Jack was always flying. There was one RCMP chap in Cloverdale. His office was there. He never wore a uniform, but a business suit. And of course, the only doctor, Dr. Fred Sinclair, was based in Cloverdale. I have told you all this because I feel it sets the stage of what Surrey was like in those early days. You didn't make an appointment to go to see Dr. Sinclair. You just went to his house and rang the bell to his office. Let yourself in. Mrs. Sinclair would arrive and let you know if he was there or if he was out on call. And of course, she would have no idea where he was. Telephones were few and far between in those days. So if he wasn't there, you made a decision. Do you stay and wait, go home, come back another day? If you looked a bit desperate, Mrs. Sinclair would take your name and address, and the very, very overworked doctor would make a house call later in the day or the next day. As well as traveling all over Surrey on unlit gravel roads making house calls, he and Mrs. Sinclair visited every elementary school once a year. The examination, of course, was your eyes, your ears, and your throat, and a thump on the chest. And it was an absolute godsend to many students who were getting very poor grades, but once they received eyeglasses, their grades improved. Dr. Sinclair's only help in those days was a VON nurse by the name of Phyllis Bond. He became acquainted with Gertrude McMillan, who had a fairly large home here in White Rock on Prospect Avenue, and he asked her if she would consider opening her home to being a convalescent home. She did agree to that, and she did that until 1953. She called her home the Restigouche, which really sounds more like a resort than a hospital. Over those years, 13 White Rock babies were born there. The first baby was Jack Best, and of course Best Street is named after the Best family. Well, people began to say, I think it's time we had a hospital here in White Rock. Nothing very much happened until the Royal Columbian Hospital put a message in a newspaper saying they really no longer wished to admit patients from Surrey. Well, I'll tell you, that got the ball rolling. The Reeve and the Council of Surrey asked businessmen from throughout the municipality to come and form the Surrey Hospital Society. Well, now, of course, you know what the problem would be, where to build this hospital. There were a number of people on that committee who felt it should be up in the north end of Surrey, but the government said no, That would be much too close to the Royal Columbian Hospital. It should be farther south. Well, they kept meeting, but they could not reach a compromise. So the 3 people who served on Missouri Hospital Society were from down our way here. They came south to White Rock and formed the White Rock Hospital Society. That was in 1947. And the year before that, 2 doctors came to White Rock, Dr. Tom Blades and Dr. Al Hogue. Their offices were in the Cloninger Hotel on Washington Avenue. Well, the Cloninger became the Laura Mel Hotel, then the Ocean Beach Hotel, and of course now it's the Hemingway Hotel on Marine Drive. The society was told they would have to raise $150,000 before approval would be given to build a hospital here in White Rock. Now that's a fair bit of change, but it was a lot of money in those days. White Rock had a population of about 6,000. All the roads were gravel. There wasn't a traffic light anywhere. And where the $1 million homes are situated today, down on Columbia and Victoria, there were just little cottages, affordable for pensioners. Many of them had chickens in their backyard, and some even had a goat. But they decided that they would go ahead and try to raise this money without asking for a referendum. Then 2 ladies went around town, Dorothy Blades and Alice Murray, and they went door to door and asked if the women would like to form a hospital auxiliary. Many said yes, so the first 5 groups were formed. They were neighborhood groups. It had to be that way because a lot of ladies didn't drive in those days, and if there was a car in the family, it went to work with the worker of the house. That was in 1948. By the end of that first year, the hospital auxiliary president was able to give a check to the chair of the society for $1,000. Now, fundraising really took off. The whole community got involved. There were dinners and dances and fashion shows, and the Players Club put on a wonderful entertainment called Hospital Hijinks. The Lions Club raffled a refrigerator. They hauled it by truck to Cloverdale and sold tickets at the Surrey Fall Fair. Then there was a night called Porch Light Nights, and the canvassers out would know if your porch light was on, you had a donation to give. Then a wonderful thing happened in 1951. A lady by the name of Amy Weatherby donated 5.5 acres of land, which became the site for our hospital. To my knowledge, Mrs. Weatherby was not a wealthy lady, but she was an extremely generous person. I recently came across a few lines written by Mrs. Weatherby, which I would like to read to you today. I love White Rock and its people. I love the springs and autumns and the glorious summer days. Every time I thought of selling my land, the thought of a hospital with well-kept grounds and driveways would flash before me, and I felt that the site must be kept for no other purpose. Amy F. Weatherby. I always become a little bit tearful myself when I read that because I love White Rock. So the money was raised and we now have the land. The bulldozers and shovels hit the ground. And what a memorable day it was for our community when our first hospital opened on August 25th, 1954. It was a cottage hospital, 45 beds, and it was called White Rock and District Hospital. But now, of course, more money was needed to be raised for equipment for this hospital, And that is when the hospital auxiliary really came to the forefront. There was a little old house on Vidal Street, the little superfluity shop, and every day when the women would work there, Mr. Dupre would go and light a fire in the stove. They sold secondhand goods there, and they even sold home baking. The rules and regulations were not as strict in those days. A little further up Vidal Street was an empty lot owned by Dr. Blades, Hogue, and Judge Bruce Fraser. They donated that land to the hospital board of the day. They built a superfluity shop for the women. A lot of labor and goods were donated. That worked very well for a number of years, but the auxiliary had outgrown that shop. Diane Perry was the auxiliary president, and I was her vice president. Diane heard of a plumbing shop that was for sale on Prospect Avenue, and she convinced the board of the day to purchase that shop for the auxiliary. That superfluity shop generates about $50,000 a month. Absolutely incredible. Many of the volunteers there are women in their 70s, 80s, and even a couple of 90-year-olds. And there are about 6 men who go there also to help. We're also grateful to those people more than 60 years ago who had the foresight and intestinal fortitude to ensure that we did get a community hospital. It gives a feeling of security as one ages, and some of us certainly have. This is demonstrated by donors like yourselves who are individuals, service clubs, businesses, and the hospital auxiliary who has raised $13 million over the years. Our hospital will continue to grow to be able to serve the expanding community. I just feel very grateful to have been able to have lived here for over 60 years. Not only is it a beautiful place to live, but the people are very generous and very kind. I thank you very much for listening to my story today.